Welcome to the Parenting Coach Podcast with Crystal. Over 7 years ago, I felt like I was stuck in this cycle of yelling and reactivity in my parenting that I did not want to be in, but I didn't know how to get out of. I knew how I wanted to parent pretty much exactly, and I'd spent hours reading books, but not finding a way to show up how I wanted to. That's when I started to turn inwards. My own inward journey was what my family needed. As I changed, everything around me changed. My kids' meltdowns decreased by 90% or more with no medications or therapy. I stopped yelling, sibling fighting became almost entirely non-existent, and I found that this change flowed into other areas of my life too. My intuition increased. I started to run my life and business in a very different way. If this sounds like something you want to, I can help. Join me each week as I share my journey, including the laughter, fun, hard times, and tears. Tune in for support, guidance, and fun conversations with my favorite experts, and really anything else that interests me too. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. As you know, there's only a few episodes left in this season and also wrapping up this entire podcast. And as I've been pondering on the last few things that I want to share, it feels only fitting to kind of explain where I'm at with parenting now, as far as my beliefs and how my beliefs have changed and morphed. If you've listened to this entire podcast from the very beginning, first of all, thank you. Thank you for being here and for listening to my voice in the world. And I hope that it has moved and changed you and helped you on your journey also. So if you have been listening for that long of a time, you probably know I talk a lot about connection-based parenting. And you can hear kind of my explanation of that in episode 4, Radical Connection. But basically the gist of it is that connection matters most, relationship matters most, and that everything else happens from there, that it's the seed that we plant and then everything else blooms that we want. We model the behavior that we want to see in our kids, and we therefore see it in our kids. So it's less of a focus on molding them and changing them and shaping them, and more on our own internal journey so that we can show up as the kind of parents that we want. So I've talked a lot about emotional regulation and connection and intuition and all of these things. And over the years, my perspective has shifted a little bit. I would say like blossomed and grown from what it was in the beginning. So I'm going to talk about a few different methodologies of parenting, and then where I find myself now in what I would call intuitive parenting. And for anyone that went to my shame-free parenting course, if you've heard me talk about shame-free parenting, I did a 5-day training on that. And you can listen to the bonus episode on the podcast, but I talk all about what shame-free parenting is also. And that has informed a lot of my, what I would call intuitive parenting now too, is that process that I went through on my own to uncover my own triggers and see what was there. So first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about a few other theories and kind of how I have come to acknowledge them now. So the very first one is attachment developmental theory, which was Dr. Gordon Neufeld, and also Dr. Deborah McNamara. If you haven't listened to our episode, you can listen to it. I think it was just last week on the podcast, but you can go find that one. And I had her a few seasons ago as well. But the idea behind that is attachment, creating a strong, secure attachment between me and my child. I have an episode where I outline the 6 stages of attachment. I talked to my aunt and to my mom, both who are kind of attachment experts in this field as well. So you can go listen to more of that if this really resonates with you. But what I love about that is that as you create the safe and secure environment for your kids to then rest in your care, that you can help them move through their frustration, move through their futility. They also model what you want to see in them. They want to stay close. They want to be close. They care about what you care about. They look to you to how to behave and what to think. And it really helps them develop their own sense of self, their own secure attachment as you parent in this way. So that's what I first started at. And as you know, my story probably already, I struggled for the first 10 or 12 years trying to figure that out until I uncovered that there was some work that I needed to do inside. And that's what I've kind of shared on this podcast. I also really resonate with gentle parenting. Sometimes people think gentle parenting is really passive, but it's actually not passive. It does prioritize a child's emotional wellness and their well-being, and it helps guide through connection instead of punishment, rewards, behavior, stuff like that. But there is boundaries. The boundaries are set with kindness. We validate emotions. We, again, model the behavior we want to see in them. And it's this kind of cooperation between parent and child. I don't think it means like we just let our kids walk all over us and they get to just do whatever they want whenever they want. That would be boundaryless. And that would be low on safety and low on security. So that's not at all what we're talking about when we talk about gentle parenting either. Conscious parenting, which was, I think it was coined, or at least it was popularized by Dr. Shefali Sabari. And it focuses more on the awareness of myself within myself, my own consciousness. So as I examine what's happening with me, my own triggers, my own wounds, and my own expectations, that I'm able to eventually move to a space where I'm less reactive. It helps guide kind of a child through consciousness. So I love all of those, and I definitely resonate with all of those. And they all informed where I feel like I am at now in my parenting. For years, I struggled to parent at all in that way. And then I really moved into attachment. And then I kind of took pieces from each of these. And for me, the focus always seemed like connection. That was the word that always stood out to me, was like, really, this is connection. And now that I do so much work on shame, I feel like shame is like the opposite of that. Shame tells us that we're the only one, that there's something uniquely wrong with us, that we're flawed, that we don't belong, that we're not loved. There's some deep rooted like shame-based beliefs under the surface in our subconscious that are really antithetical to connection, which is why I think that I love shame and connection so much, because I love this work. So as I kind of moved and molded and shaped my own parenting through these different methodologies and through these different theories, one of the main focuses, if you've heard me talk, is intuition. I love to speak about intuition. And I feel like we move through our shame, we move through our triggers. And on the other side of that door, once we open it, is intuition. It naturally comes. It's like shame moves to intuition that's on the other side of it. And I found that first in parenting through healing the wounds that were inside of me, through uncovering my own triggers. I was able to really tap into intuition within parenting and use that to inform my parenting, which I think it really has. And I don't think I'm at a space, and I don't think I'll ever be at a space where I'm perfect at it. I was just annoyed all evening long at my kids on Monday. And I remember thinking like, okay, like I even know that I'm triggered, but I'm still just staying triggered. Like I'm not pausing, I'm not walking away, I'm not like processing my stuff, and didn't process it again until the next day. And I was like, I think that that's learning is a spiral, right? It like circles around and then slaps us back in the face. It's like, okay, here it is again. Okay, here it is again. So I don't expect that I'll get to a space where I'm never triggered and I'm never reactive and I'm always calm. But I also truly believe that that's a gift for our kids, that they get to see our bad times. They get to see our messy parts. They get to see our darkness. They get to see our heaviness. And as we model working through that in a really healthy way, they're able to see that too. And I think it helps develop them. I think it helps them be more aware of their messy parts and be more okay with it. There's a quote that I've been sharing with like all my clients this last week because I love it so much. And it's by Pema Chodron. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. And what I love about that is I actually think that's true with our kids too. If we want to be present with their feelings, if we want to validate their feelings, if we want to be able to tolerate the discomfort of all of their emotions, it starts within ourselves first. You've heard me talk about this analogy of the gardener, right? Our kids are the seed and it got planted, and we might not have even got to choose what that seed was. And it grows and we don't mold it. We don't shape it. We don't make it conform. We just get to watch it grow. We get to, our responsibility is the environment in which it grows in, right? Which is our stuff, our energy. We're making sure it has sun and that it has fertilizer in the soil, and we pull out the weeds when it's there. And we definitely have responsibility and care there. But what we want to do is help them to grow into themselves. I found this quote by Jess Lair that said, "Children are not things to be molded, but are people to be unfolded." And I love that. They're already a person. They came to us already a person. They're already our equal. And I think that's one of the shifts that I've kind of made, is that it's not like me above them and I have all of this wisdom and I know everything and I've kind of got there and now I'm going to impart that onto my kids. But it's a relationship of equals, and I get to be here creating and shaping the environment that this garden gets to flourish in. So one thing that I've been seeing within kids is recently, I guess between parents and kids, is that a lot of parents have a really negative outlook of the next generation. In fact, I was just reading a Facebook post before I got on here, and it's in a homeschooling group, and someone was talking about how this next generation of kids want everything handed to them, that they just don't care at all, that they're lazy, that they're unproductive, that we need to be more strict with them. We need to be more disciplined with them. And I was pondering on that because almost every single comment of like the 80 or 90 comments really resonated with that. They were like, yep, that's absolutely what we see. And I see this in a lot of the conversations around is that like our kids are being so warped and shaped by technology or social media. Like we really need to like get a handle on things. And, this awful world that our kids live in. And I don't like to live in that space where I feel powerless, where I feel like social media has warped and changed them so much, and our kids are lazy and they're unproductive and there's nothing that we can do about it. And I don't believe that to be true. And I also believe that it's a way that we give our power away. For like, well, there's nothing we can do about this terrible next generation of kids. I see something really opposite. I see that kids are really beautiful in this next generation, that they are very kind and compassionate, and they're very, very aware of unfairness and inequality. And they will bring it up like nobody's business, like in their own home when they're little. They're like, nope, that's not equal. Nope, that doesn't feel good to me. And I was chatting with a friend the other day, and she said she was reading some marketing study or something where this next generation of people really love purchasing from companies where it's like you buy a pair of shoes and then like 10 shoes get sent to somebody in need or something like that. That they would rather spend more money on that if they knew that they were helping other people. So what I see is a generation that's very compassionate. They're very considerate of others' feelings. They're very innovative. I was chatting with my daughter the other day, and she was asking me, she's 9, and she was asking me about how she can help poor people. She was like, what can I do? Like, I feel so young and like, there's nothing that I can do to help people that are in need. She's like, what could I possibly do? And she was like really sad about it. This was actually a really emotional conversation because she just felt too small to do anything. So we talked about some ideas on how she could, but I just thought how beautiful it is that the next generation really does care so much about other people. I also imagine that they're not okay with the status quo. I've had a lot of conversations with teenagers, and I think that there's this like deep kind of unease and agitation of like things need to change. And I hope that that innovation and that agitation does lead to more change, that they, through kind of seeing that things can be done better, they do it better. I feel like learning and education and how we've done it over the last several decades hasn't changed very much. And if you look at technology, how much technology has changed 10, 20, 30 years ago. Like when I was in junior high was the very first time I heard of the word internet. I remember I was already married with at least one kid by the time I heard about YouTube. And I remember somebody explaining it to me, like people just get to take videos and of themselves doing whatever they want and posting it on the internet. And I was like, what? Like, why would people watch that? I don't get it. Like, so much has changed, right? And thinking about AI now, a lot of people think that AI is really scary or it's going to take our jobs or all of these things. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she was like, we used to think that about like the dishwasher or like the washing machine. We're like, well, what are we going to spend all our day doing if we're not doing it that way? But how much of us now are so grateful that like we don't have to do those tedious things. So I take that to learning, and I think, okay, so what are all the tedious things, the things that we're like making our kids memorize and regurgitate and all of that, that like if they have access to literally all information everywhere, then what? Like what becomes the purpose of education? What becomes the purpose of learning? And I would encourage you to read Raising Critical Thinkers and also go listen to the podcast episode I did with Julie Bogart on this idea. But I think that learning and education is so much deeper than what we often think that it is. And if our kids are going to have an immense amount of information at their fingertips, we have to change the way that we think about education and learning too. But I also think pivoting this back into intuitive parenting is that what kind of parent do we need to be now? What is that kind of modern generation future of parenting? I learned about developmental attachment theory or attachment developmental theory probably when my kids were like maybe 4 and 2. So like 14, 15 years ago. I don't even remember when he wrote that book, but it was a long time ago. And so I think, okay, what has changed? What has developed? How has the science and the research changed? But also like what feels good to me? Like what do I think is important in parenting? Knowing this about society going forward, believing what I do about the next generation of kids being really compassionate and caring about others and really wanting to create significant changes. What parenting do I find myself at? And do I feel like is the way of the future? And I would call that intuitive parenting. And I think intuitive parenting kind of takes all of these modalities and like, for sure, it is everything that I just explained. But I'm going to talk about a few more steps as well, steps that I felt myself kind of blossom into or add onto. And maybe I just haven't delved deep enough into these other forms of parenting and they're there also. I'm not sure, but they're definitely pieces that I found that I have developed into that have been really helpful. Number one is that our relationship with ourself is what matters most. Now, if you've ever listened to my podcast, I like talk about this all of the time, but our relationship with ourselves is the common denominator that we are bringing into every other relationship. I'm going to say that again. Our relationship with us is the common denominator that we are bringing into every other relationship. So if you are finding yourself deeply unhappy in a friendship, in a partnership, within a parent-child relationship, no matter the age, the only aspect of it that you have true power over is yourself. We often do this over responsibility, under responsibility thing, where we don't take responsibility for the relationship with ourselves and for how that's impacting things, but we over responsibility, like have high expectations of other people, really want them to change, take on their thoughts and feelings, take on their opinions of us. And so I think our relationship with us is not only the thing that we have power over, but that's the thing where we'll see the most change. That as I change one thing, I can't not change others. It's like a domino effect. My energy energetically influences other people, so it can't not influence them. It has to influence them. That is the environment. That's the garden, the environmental garden that I have control over. That is and not control as in force or coercion, but power. That is where my power and strength lies. Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. And I say, be the change you want to see in your family. Be the change you want to see in your child. If there is something that you want to see in your child differently, reflect that back into yourself. How am I modeling this? How am I at with this? How willing am I to meet these own parts of myself that I have a hard time with? Those are the places that are going to make the biggest differences. That's the darkness. That's the messy part of yourself that you will then meet and will be your deepest gift. Number two, reparenting. When we are triggered, I think of that as a block between the way that I want to parent and the way that I am parenting. There's like a wall in between it. I'm not able to access the tools that I want to access, the tools that I believe in when it comes to gentle parenting or connection-based parenting or attachment parenting. Even if I consciously get there, my subconscious might really muck me up in the middle of me trying to parent in the way that I want to. And that is all about reparenting. That is all about shame-free parenting. That is noticing my own childhood triggers, right? If my child is not listening to me, what really bothers me about that? And I keep asking myself that question. I've had episodes where I explained this before, but I ask myself, what really bothers me about that? Why? What really bothers me about that? I keep answering and asking and answering and asking. And eventually you will get to some meaning that you are attaching to their behavior. And often as parents, it's meaning that we're attaching to ourselves about our kids' behavior. Maybe I'm not a good enough parent. Maybe if I was, they would listen more. Maybe we don't have a good relationship and maybe that's on me. Maybe I've done something wrong to make them be this way, right? That's the kind of meaning that we're attaching to it. And that is the trigger. And that emotional activation that we have, that trigger that we have, reparenting is how we get there. Reparenting being, imagine that activation or that feeling was a child inside of us. What would it need? What is it saying to me? How would I respond to it? And I think of this as my responsibility first before I go back and deal with what's happening with my kids. I need to tend to myself and my own inner world, and then I can tend to them because I can't go to them first if I haven't gotten there. I can't give what I don't have. And self-compassion is the antidote to shame. Self-compassion will be the process that you will go through as you come to sit with those parts of yourselves that are feeling reactive in the moment. And then you will be able to give that to your kids as well. And it will be much more genuine. I remember when I first felt like I was implementing connection-based parenting and attachment-based parenting, but I was like doing all the steps, but not feeling it. And it was not working. And I absolutely see this now in the world. I for sure used to do this, and I'm sure I still slip up into these patterns sometimes, but I really recognize this when I see other people parenting their kids and thinking like they're trying to do it. They're trying to take what they learned from the book and do it. But it's not that easy. You can't just take something and do it because of your own inner world, right? If my energy is actually feeling like this is ridiculous, you're too old for this, how could you, is feeling resentful, is feeling bitter, no matter what I show on the outside, what I'm actually showing is my energy. They are hearing everything that is inside of me, and they are not hearing what I'm actually saying and doing. So I have to tend to my own inner world first. And I think that's like one of the main crux of intuitive parenting is tuning into my own inner world before I can then move to intuition, right? Tuning into my own inner shame, inner reactivity before I can tune in intuition. Number 3 would be intuition, knowing, wisdom. I'm going to give you a little analogy about business because this is the problem that I see in business in the world right now, especially entrepreneurs first starting out businesses or entrepreneurs that feel like their business isn't necessarily working. There's all these parts of a business, right? So if you're a coach, there's like marketing and there's funnels and there's websites and there's all these parts. And we think that we just need to find the right platform. We just need to find the right website. We just need to find the right website copy to put on it. We just need to find more clients and then it will quote unquote work. But I think of it as like, those are all the parts of the machine. And there's a generator that makes the machine actually work, actually produce. And the generator is our own internal world. It is our energy. Energy is what is missing in business today. So if you are feeling like you have a business and it's not successful, or you have a business and you don't like how it's going or whatever, tap into energy. Don't tap into the system side of it. Anyways, I think about that when I think about parenting now too. I read all of these books from all of these people that figured it out, but they figured it out at the end, right? They figured out what worked for them. And then they're like, okay, here are the steps. I see people often talk about like, here's the mantra you can use. Here's a word that might help you. Maybe you can shift this and say this and do this instead. But that worked for them because it was what they found intuitively. So just in the same way as business is the same rules apply across the board. It's also in parenting. It's not the mantra that is going to be effective or not. It's not what you say or what you do or how you say it or do it. It's the energy behind it. Your energy is the motor. That's the generator that then will make the changes that you want to see in your parenting. So trusting your intuition, tapping into your own answers, like the tiny little breadcrumbs, like the little hints that just drop in intuitively on the other side of shame. And just trusting that they will work because they might not necessarily seem big. They often seem small. And in fact, I was meditating this weekend and the answer that came to me was the small things are the big things. And I truly believe that. The small things are the big things. When I get an answer that feels small, feels like a tiny little breadcrumb, and I follow it and I follow it and I follow it and I follow it, that is what over time leads to the big things. And then I can look back and see kind of my own path, my own way of doing things. So I don't trust a parenting book that doesn't talk about intuition because it's in us. The wisdom is in us. And we find it through step 1 and step 2. We get to step 3. Okay, 2 more. Step 4, trusting our kids. So the beliefs that I hold about the next generation, I hold on a macro level, but I also hold on a micro level. I don't believe that my kids are lazy and unproductive and entitled and that they just want everything given to them on a silver platter. If I did, that would completely change the energy in which I parent. It would change my beliefs about my kids. I believe that we can breathe beliefs into our kids. So that would change all of that as well, right? And so instead, I choose to trust them. I consciously choose the belief that my children are good, that they are good. So of course they want to do good. And if they are good and they want to do good, and that's not necessarily what I see in their behavior right now, then my question becomes, what's blocking them there? What's blocking them from being congruent in how they want to be, if that's really what their being is? Instead of my child is doing this to me and they are manipulating it and they're doing it on purpose. Even the things that seem the most on purpose. What if they aren't? What if that's their best in that moment? What if there's a block blocking them from being able to show up in the way that they want to? That is what I choose to believe because it changes how I show up for them. And trusting them has made all the difference. Trusting that they have wisdom for their own path. So I don't freak out if they don't apply to college, or if they don't want to do what I want them to do in college, or if they want to hang out with a different friend, or if they want to do something that I'm like, I don't really think that that's going to end that well. I trust that they also need the lessons that they'll learn from making those mistakes. And I trust that they are on their own path. And because I trust that for them, they trust that for them. And that's number 5. I help them access their own intuition. And this is something that I did not hear in the parenting world. All of the parenting things that I said before, I didn't hear this. And maybe it is there, and I haven't heard other people speak about it. But I think it's one thing to just love and connect with and believe that your kids are going to get there as you model the behavior. It's a different thing to think they already have that wisdom in them. They already have it. So it's not my modeling that even gives it to them. It's that when they see it in me, it feels like it's reflecting something about them. And they feel that within themselves. They come into those beliefs like, I am good, and I can trust my own knowing, and I have deep wisdom inside, and I am on my path and journey that I need to be on. They get to have those beliefs as I curate those beliefs in myself, and then they see it reflected in themselves as well. So that number 5 part is, how can I help them tap into their intuition, to listen to their body in small things, when they're tired, when they're hungry, how much food they want to eat, when they want to stop, right? The little tiny physical things, physical sensations can help them also learn to trust their own ideas, letting them follow their own ideas, even if it leads them somewhere where they make a mistake, where they learn a lesson from that mistake, knowing that I'm here and that I love them and that I trust them. And I think from that space of creating intuition in them, helping them tap into their own intuition and wisdom, I can also breathe beliefs into them. Those were some of my favorite episodes. If you haven't listened to those ones, I can't remember if that's this season or last season, on breathing belief into your kids. But I love that idea that I get to choose beliefs intentionally for them before I even see evidence of it being true for them. That I can breathe those beliefs in them anyways, and I can believe them beforehand for them. And as I believe them, I see evidence of them, and it does manifest into them. So intuitive parenting for me is taking all of these pieces, connection and attachment and gentle parenting and conscious parenting, and then also adding this, like our relationship with ourselves, reparenting and our triggers, tapping into our own intuition, which I think other philosophies have addressed as well, but then also adding trusting our kids, believing our kids, creating and helping them tap into their own intuition, believing that they have wisdom inside of them, that they come here with wisdom. So we're just helping them access their wisdom. We're not imbuing them with this wisdom that they are like this empty vessel and they don't have any of it. They already do have that. And I think that's a really big shift. And I think that's a shift that is going to change the face of parenting and the world and our kids in the next generation. Imagine if our kids grew up in a home where they were trusted, where they were acknowledged and seen and loved and valued, where they learned to listen to themselves, to listen to their body, to listen to their intuition, where we actually cared about their opinions and ideas and beliefs and saw and validated those within them. I think that it's a really beautiful space that we can move into it now. And this is where I feel like I'm at in parenting over the 4 years. Can you believe it? It's been over 4 years that I've been doing this podcast. I don't even remember how many episodes, like well over 200 episodes over the last 4 years. And when I first started this, I had really moved into feeling really solid with connection-based parenting. And I'd been struggling at it for years and years and years, and finally moved into this solidness and was able to see the transition in my kids without behavioral therapy, without medication, without specific changes that my kids needed to make. I saw changes in their behavior through changes in me. And now I just feel it even more amplified, their ability to regulate, their ability to tap into their answers, our connection, our relationship. And I just see it differently now. I see them on their own journey and path, and not me as the person that's molding them, but me as the person that gets to just be alongside them as I walk them home on their journey. And I get to just see in awe of what they create and the wisdom that's within them and what their path in life really is and how beautiful that looks. So I'm grateful for where I am in intuitive parenting now. And I hope that this was insightful for you as well. And I would encourage you just to ponder on some of these ideas on what would it mean to trust my kids more? What would it mean to breathe some beliefs into them that maybe I don't necessarily have yet, or I don't believe that they have yet? What is in my power and what is not? And how can I release the things that are not and step into the things that are in a really powerful way? I think of it as like a quiet power, a building power, an innate power. And how does my energy influence other people? And if I notice it influencing other people, what can I do about that? How can I use that power for good? Thank you again for being here. We only have a few episodes left, but I would love to hear from you. If this episode landed, if this podcast landed, and you would like to hear more about intuitive parenting, I'm considering doing some sort of a workshop or something, a half-day virtual retreat or something where we speak about this, where we learn about this, where we also integrate it, where we integrate it through a lot of this subconscious stuff that I do with my clients. So if this is something that interests you, send me a quick email at crystal@coachcrystal.ca and just say, yes, I'm interested. And we'll see if there's interest there, because I think it would be kind of a fascinating way to end my parenting journey, to have a half-day little retreat, workshop, conversation and coaching, so that we can kind of spread this message to the world. We can spread this message to the next generation, and we can all choose to believe something different about this next generation than what might be being told to us by outside sources. We get to decide what we believe for them. And this is what I believe. Your children are good, and you are too. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, I would love for you to help spread the word by getting this message of support and guidance out to as many people as possible. So text it to your best friend or tag me on Instagram and share it. Leave a review, rate it, subscribe it, or follow on your favorite platform. Send me a DM on IG letting me know which parts have impacted you or what you'd like to see on future episodes. We'll see you next week.